I was a sexually active teen, had come to know Christ at a young age, but in middle school and high school kind of walked away from the Lord. And I experienced a pregnancy scare when I was a junior in high school.
I went into the school and spoke for a shop teacher, and he didn't quite know how to introduce me. He goes, I just know these guys are having sex and they're getting girls pregnant. So here's the sex guy, do your thing. And that kind of stuck. And I still get called that when I go speak in front of schools.
Going back in history, abstinence education was signed 96, the Welfare Act of 96 by Bill Clinton, of all people. And all this abstinence money was available to our programs. So, it's crazy because things have drastically changed throughout the years. 2010, all the money did go away. It was redirected in other places. And so how would you say your ministry has changed throughout the years from when you first started to where you're at now? What's changed? What's shifted? And how do you guys keep going?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Baffled, the podcast where we help you understand your misunderstood teen. We unpack the challenges teens face and give you practical tools to bridge the gap between confusion and connection. Parents aren't just confused about teenagers, they're confused about the cultural war surrounding teens. Today we have Dr. Bill and Angie Kagey of Impact to help us understand what's actually happening in schools, why organizations like Impact and More to Life are facing resistance, and how parents can respond without fear, outrage, and disengagement. So yeah, Dr. Bill, Dr. Angie, can you first tell us more about Impact, what you guys do? How did you start? Where did the vision come from? I'm sorry if there's like a lot, but just really interested for our audience to kind of hear about your ministry and what you guys do.
Well, I actually got involved in the Impact program. It wasn't named Impact at the time, but it originated from a local crisis pregnancy center called Brain and Care Pregnancy Center. There was a lady there by the name of Tina, who was the prevention services director at the time, and she was looking for volunteer speakers to go into the schools. She wanted to do a training. I had learned about it from another friend, Natalie, who actually works at New Life Solutions at a woman's place. And she's like, Angie, would you be interested in this? And I said, yeah, I would actually. I'd love to learn how to be a speaker in the schools. At the same time, Tina also reached out to my husband, who was at the time the director of student ministry at Crosstown, which is now the Crossing Church in the Tampa Bay area. And she was trying to get the program into the student ministries there. And my husband, after he heard from Tina, said, I really think you should talk to Angie about this. I think this is something she's going to be interested in. So I was hearing it from two different ways. And sure enough, I connected with Tina and became trained to be a volunteer speaker in the schools. And she, very shortly after training us, decided to move on and out of state. And so I walked into her position and began to take over the prevention services department of the pregnancy center. And the reason why this particular movement meant so much to me is because of my own personal story. I was a sexually active teen, had come to know Christ at a young age, but in middle school and high school kind of walked away from the Lord. And I experienced a pregnancy scare when I was a junior in high school. And it wasn't until after my parents found out that we learned that I wasn't pregnant. But I know what it feels like to be nervous and scared and anxious with the possibility of being pregnant as a teen. And I had just learned that I had reached one of the top goals that I had been working towards all in my high school career, and that was to be in the show choir. And I learned I just made the show choir, and now I am worried about a teen pregnancy. Obviously, the outcome was different. I wasn't pregnant, but I wish my choices would have changed in that moment, but it didn't. I continued in that lifestyle. But it wasn't until I ended up going to a Bible college that they began to talk about. I had a speaker at a Bible college that talked about the importance of waiting until your marriage to have sex. I'm kind of on my way to tuning that speaker out because I had already made the choices. And it was almost as if the speaker read my mind because he said, maybe you're sitting there and you're wondering, what good does this information do you because you have those choices? And it immediately got my attention because I had never really heard that message before. And that question just really had set in my mind. And he goes, I want you to know that God can look at you as white as snow if you've never even done it. Mm-hmm. And boy, did I need to hear that message. And so right there, I repented of that lifestyle and really turned to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to say that the Lord really did a 180 in my life to where I really forgo that lifestyle and was true to that decision until the day I got married. And so I know that for teenagers, if I can do it, if they've been engaging in sexual risk, that if I can make a different decision, and so I really received hope in that moment. And that's why I was so passionate about getting involved in Impact. So 27 years later, I'm still doing it. So
Amen.
that was
That's
my
awesome.
involvement when I got started.
What about you, Bill?
Well, I was a teenager that gave my life to Christ when I was 16. And then I went to Liberty University to play sports. And God really got a hold of my heart. And I got called into ministry while I was there. Studied youth ministry and was single until I was 29 and met my wife. And 2 weeks later, I asked her to think about getting married. 1 month later, she had a ring on her finger. And here we are 35 years later. But my commitment was a little different because I was headed down the wrong path as a teenager, but God kind of intervened through some people and I gave my life to Christ. And then I began to just realize that God had a bigger purpose for my life. And so when Angie and I met, we went into full-time ministry together. And then we moved here 28 years ago. She, one day after she took over the program, said, "Hey, I need a volunteer speaker and I need a male. You're it." She trained me and I went into the school and spoke for a shop teacher, and he didn't quite know how to introduce me. He goes, "I just know these guys are having sex and they're getting girls pregnant. So here's the sex guy, do your thing." And that kind of stuck. And I still get called that when I go speak in front of schools.
Yep.
But, just being able to just walk in and just have the freedom to share a message. So we did that together. And so Impact, when it started 15 years ago, I uh, was a volunteer on staff at a church, and then our situation changed. So I went on staff and became one of the speakers. And now I'm a development director and one of the board members. And so I work full time just so that we can do the nonprofit, but I still volunteer and help with that and speak. And then I went back to school during COVID, got my master's. And then I got my doctorate in leadership. And one of the areas that I focused on was parents, how to deal with parents, because it's a real crucial area right now.
Yeah.
Still doing ministry, just doing it a little differently than I did when I started out, but very involved in what we do with Impact.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's good. Well, I mean, there's some parts of that story I never heard before. So that was great hearing your full testimony. So as some may know that Impact and More to Life are are very similar. We may do things a little bit different, but we're pretty much on the same team accomplishing the same goals. And so as going back in history, abstinence education was signed 96, the Welfare Act of 96 by Bill Clinton of all people. And all this abstinence money was available to our programs. More to Life came into fruition about 1999 under Linda Daniels. And I came aboard in about 2000. So, it's crazy because things have drastically changed throughout the years. 2010, all the money did go away. It was redirected in other places. And so now we're like trying to stay afloat, being nonprofit and fundraising and all that good stuff that comes with that. And so how would you say your ministry has changed throughout the years from when you first started to where you're at now? What's changed? What's shifted? And how do you guys keep going?
Well, I'll just say that, as I got started, I started out as a volunteer, and then 2005, there were a couple of different agencies that came together under some CBA grants, and that was the Pregnancy Care Center, Plant City. Yeah. And then it was also a woman's place, and we determined that we would go together in a CBA grant. And we were very blessed to have that for 3 years. So it was great because those people that were volunteers then became paid. And then in 2008, when that grant went away, we applied for a second grant, and it was a CBA grant, and we got it again. And so we were in year 2 of a 5-year grant, and then the political climate changed. And as you mentioned, Jason, that funding was redirected other ways. And so the agencies, the pregnancy care centers that we were working with, made a decision at that point that they would launch Impact to become its own C3. So then we could come out from under the umbrella and we could go after funding for just this program. And because, as you know, when the pregnancy care centers are raising funds, they're raising funds for their clients, and rightly so. They need to do that.
Right.
But our organization's Impact in particular had really grown. And so we wanted to keep that presence in the schools. So they launched us, and then we established the I went back to being a volunteer. So I continued to work full time, but with no salary. And that was really because we wanted the program to continue. Even though there wasn't funding, we had already created such a presence in the schools that we didn't want to lose that presence.
Right.
So the volunteers that once were paid by the grant went back to being volunteers, and we continued to keep servicing the schools. And it took a lot to keep it going. We had to raise funds, and we had to have we had a significant challenge that faced us, going from thousands of dollars to nothing.
Mhm.
And so we had some pregnancy centers specifically that helped to, give us a little bit of monthly income, but it wasn't enough to really sustain any staff. And so I was really challenged to get out into the community and make people aware that we existed. See, our schools knew we existed, and the pregnancy centers that we had partnered with knew we existed, but the community really didn't. And so I was really challenged by one of my board members to get actively involved in the Chamber of Commerce. And that really began to help. Then in 2019, I actually ran for honorary mayor of Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so key about that is it really isn't a political race at all. In fact, it's whichever candidate can raise the most amount of money in a short period of time is given the title of honorary mayor. And so I learned in a month with a team what we could do by raising funds in a short period of time. So we had multiple events. That was honestly changed our organization. Now we are completely funded by the community, businesses, donors, community partners.
That's
And
awesome.
that mayor's race is what really helped us to learn how to do events and to do them well and to do them in a short period of time. So
Yeah.
now we have 5 key fundraisers that keep us going. And of course, we have monthly donors. So I'm amazed looking back 15 years later now, no funding, no grant funding, that God has sustained our organization and has allowed us to continue to keep the message alive here in this part of the county, in Hillsborough County. So very, very grateful. And it's to all God be the glory. He led us on the paths that he did to keep us going. So
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and Jason alluded to this, that the political landscape changed. And as a result, before we hopped on a call, Jason and I, as we were reviewing, is like, we are, for all intents and purposes, in a culture war. We don't like to use the word that we're in a culture war, but the fact that we, More to Life and Impact, aren't inside public schools as much as we used to is a direct impact that we are in a culture war.
Right.
So with that, how did you guys learn how to pivot? Because with ministries like ours, we can't just wave the white flag and just say, okay, we have to do something. We need to reach these students somehow, some way. So what are you guys doing?
So I'm going to share, I know Angie will share too, but the word pivot is very crucial because when COVID set in, we were right in the middle of our summer program, which means students are coming in, they're getting the community service, and then we go out to boys and girls and YMCAs and rec centers. Well, we couldn't travel, we couldn't do anything. So just even having students in a room together was a challenge, right? So the training. So I called one of the directors from the Boys and Girls Club. I said, what can we do? Are y'all meeting? And they go, yeah. So we actually did it through Zoom. We videotaped it. And so we got in front of a computer, set it up, put a little microphone up, and the kids did it. And they were in the other part of the county and they saw that. So we pivot. So I think the key word is pivoting, looking, and because we are in a culture war. I was sharing this last night with some educators that, the culture has shifted every year, but it's shifting even faster than we can ever imagine. And so one of the things that we have to realize is that the culture is going to shift. If we keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's going to not work. So there's a key phrase. What is God doing? How can I join it? Where is he working? And then join that effort and make that happen. And that doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean we figured it out. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have challenges, but I think we're going to have to be a little bit more kind of like the old phrase, be on roller skates and move, because we got to be constantly moving and changing because it's not going to be the way it was. And so I don't know that anybody's figured it out. If they have, they probably wrote a book and now it's out of date. But I think that's the key. And the other thing I would say is we got to really get back to the basics of training parents, because parents have gotten away from raising their kids the way they need to. So I think there's just as much challenge with students as is parents.
Yeah.
May I also speak to that, Jace?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's really important to diversify. And what I mean by that is, we had put so much emphasis on the public school that we had kind of didn't spend as much time or energy on getting into our private schools, our charter schools. And I think it was really eye-opening for us because, in some of those environments like private schools and charter schools, more specifically private, those are faith-based schools in some regard. And so you can go much deeper with the students and you
Yep.
can come from the spiritual perspective, which I really like. So I believe God refocused us in a lot of ways. And I think
Yes.
I love what Bill said about, watching to see where God's working and then join him. Because if God's
Yes.
not working in the public school right now, like that's not the area the area of where he wants us to speak. Where do you want us to speak, Lord? Because this is still your message. That means you've got somewhere you want us to be. So focusing on those types of environments and trying to expand into the private and the charter schools. But then also we had already had some clubs established in some of the local schools. And we do still have an open door there. So that is also allowing us to spend more time with students because clubs is not just a one-time conversation. Now we get to speak to them almost every month. And so I love that because now we can build more of a relationship with the students. It's not just a one-time conversation. So I love that part. So we've tried to spend more time on our club model, and that was part of our pivot. We've also got a good relationship with the school district in regards to mentoring. So that's another component that we've been able to add just last year, where those students that are maybe on the bubble in the sense that their attendance is getting low, they're having a hard time staying motivated in school. Now some of the schools are partnering us with those students and where we can have more of a mentoring relationship with those students to help them get motivated to stay in school and to focus on their goals and dreams. So that I absolutely love too, that God has opened that door for us. And then we're now focusing on after school clubs. We had a summer program that is very strong, that our teenagers actually are the presenters during this. But in the boys and girls clubs and the YMCAs that Bill mentioned, but now we are actually having presenters go into the boys and girls clubs and YMCAs during the school year, but in the after school. Yeah, pivoting. Hey, it's all about what are you doing? Where do you want us to be? We know you're not telling us to stop. So why did you close that door in the school? I don't know. But God's saying, but I don't want you to forget about these students. They need you just as much too. So yeah. So I hope that answers your question, but you just have to be flexible and do what God wants you to do. And it causes you to seek him more too,
Yeah, I had a conversation when I first moved back to Florida a couple years ago. A friend mentioned that Florida is a blessing that there's school choice. So with school choice, you have conservative families that are not Christian, because we can't conflate the two.
Right.
Conservative, because they see that's what's going on in the culture, that they're opting to still send their kids to a private Catholic or Christian school, even though they don't identify as religious.
Right.
Which means that there's still seeds that can still be planted even in the private school sector. And another thought that came to mind is, and probably this is where we can work with churches, is working with homeschool co-ops, because then there's going to be a little bit more freedom and flexibility. But it's finding out where those homeschool co-ops meet, developing those relationships, and seeing, hey, how can we offer your services? Hey, that it frees you up for an hour or two for us to come in and do the teaching for you. That's just a thought that came to mind as we think about pivoting. How can we still reach people, be engaged in the community? So yeah, Jason, you got any other thoughts, any other questions?
Well, I love talking with Bill and Angie because, we not only can we sympathize with each other, we can empathize. Like we're in the same realm. Like it's very encouraging, because sometimes it is lonely out there. Sometimes it's like, does anybody understand what I'm going through? And then when you connect with other what's called SRA groups, sexual risk avoidance groups, I mean, you can actually bear each other's burdens and pray with each other. And that's the beauty part of it. So yeah, things have changed. Unfortunately, we're not in the public schools as of 2022 like we used to be. And it was very discouraging, but man, God is faithful. And again, it's not over. We just on to the next assignment, and we keep marching and keep going forward and finding creative ways to make that happen. But, like I mentioned, things have changed. And so, you've been in it for years, longer than I have. And for years, it's always been abstinence education. And then somehow along the lines, it switched to sexual risk avoidance. And a couple of reasons for that. Some abstinence has been used and abused and politicized and been demonized by the far left and by the society. And then, so we switch gears. And so now I know you can vouch for this. It's not just about abstinence and saving sex till marriage. That's definitely a component, but it's expanded into something bigger. And now we can offer so much more. So could you, Angie, or even Dr. Bill, can you explain the difference between abstinence education and sexual risk avoidance education? Like, how has it changed and shifted where we now have more to offer? Who wants to take that one?
Well, that could be a loaded question, Jason.
Yeah.
Because, abstinence seems to be the bad word, right? And then in some cultures, like, abstinence is not a bad word.
Right.
I think the key is this, that teenagers and young adults are still in need of a savior. Okay, I'm going to say that up front.
Yes.
When we go into schools, a lot of times people will go into schools saying, I get to go in and I get to do this, I get to do that. It's learning what the school's needs are and what this culture, you guys talked about culture. There's so many cultural needs right now. It's not just sexual abstinence where they avoid something. It's learning to avoid the high risk behavior, whether it be drugs or alcohol, tobacco, sex. And so even just the culture of the media, the cell phone, the AI, all the things, culture is changing fast. And if, I think if we look at what Blockbuster did, if they'd have pivoted, there would be no need for Netflix. Okay.
Right.
They would have been the market, but they didn't pivot. So they stayed with the CDs and they didn't go digital. And so now buy me a Blockbuster. It's a museum. So as church and church leaders and as, mentors to students and that culture, I don't know that we can put a definition on it right now. We can try, but we need to also look at what is going on right now in our culture. We know that social media is a big deal. We know that there's a lot of mental health going on. There's a lot of things that are happening. So if we don't shift it, it doesn't matter if we call it abstinence or sexual risk avoidance. It really doesn't matter. It matters, but it doesn't matter to the point where we're going to become obsolete because we're not moving with the culture. So what is the need? And I think in some ways, I've heard Angie say this, and Angie, you can speak to this, but almost an a la carte. This is what we offer. This is what we can speak on. And schools can say, okay, yes, this is the need. Yes. This is where we are struggling. And then we come in and that we give support, guidance, and instruction in that area instead of coming and saying, this is what we're going to do. I think we got to maybe rethink that thought because God's word hasn't changed, but at the same time, culture is changing. And so we can't identify just with the culture, but we got to say, okay, well, how does God truth apply right now to what's going on? What can we do? Because I believe if we do that, there's going to be momentum again. And, and like Angie said, the schools were a great avenue, but if they're not going to open up, what can we do? We've got social media. We got a platform now. We're talking, we're in different places and we're doing this doing this podcast. And so when we do that, the technology, learning how to use that properly. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's kind of where I'm seeing some things we got to change a little bit.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we want optimal health in all areas for students.
Yes.
Not just sexual risk avoidance, but risk avoidance in general. But we want them to be healthy mentally and socially and spiritually. And so I agree with Bill saying that, let's take on some of the topics of mental health because that is such an issue right now in our culture, in our students' lives. We want to be able to address that. I know Jason has offered like social media safety and talking about those components. That's important because we know that social media plays a big part in students feeling depressed. And they're comparing themselves to what they see with social media, not to mention just the peer pressure and the bullying that happens too, and cyberbullying and whatnot. So there are a lot of areas in which we can talk about that really will help students achieve optimal health. That's what we really are after.
Right.
It's a good way to put
it.
And
so, there's reasons why students engage in sexual activity, but any high risk behavior. And a lot of times we know we know it's the void that they're missing in their relationship with Christ. They need a relationship with Christ. So those are just symptoms to a deeper problem. And that's
Yes.
because they don't know Jesus yet. And so
That's right.
if we can get more to that root, that's where we're going to really see behavioral and life change and heart change, because we know we don't want them just to change their behavior. We want them to have a heart change and ultimately come to know Christ. So again, we put so much emphasis on public school, but what about those Christian schools where we're able to actually share the gospel in our presentation?
Yes.
Why not? Let's do it.
Yes.
If we have that open door, we should do that, because
Yes.
that's what it's all about. That really is all about, is their
Amen.
relationship with Christ.
Woo, I'm getting fired up. This is awesome because, exactly right. I mean, listen, I am so grateful for the years being in the public schools and the grants and all that. I mean, that was some good times. But man, when you look outside of that and you just found this newfound freedom of not saying do whatever you want, but like be able to go beyond the curriculum and the structure, you know, you have to stay within the guidelines is what I'm saying, and offer so much more. It's just so freeing that yes, I can share the gospel here, and I can talk to students about this, that, and the other thing that I couldn't under grant money. And so it's a beautiful thing. So I get excited just hearing, you know, when you guys talk about that. So that was really good. And so, you know, obviously getting into different schools and different realms is challenging, but God is opening doors. Another area that I find pretty challenging is parents, you know, getting into parent groups and PTAs and all that stuff. Now, with PTAs, I mean, it's like they're required to be there, but if you offer anything, let's say even at a church or whatever, nobody shows up. And it's very discouraging. And so, you know, we really try to do or offer parent presentations, and some bite but many don't. And it's very, very, it's discouraging, right? The reason why we do this Baffled podcast is another avenue to reach parents. So we're trying creative ways to do that. But I want you guys to speak on that, like, because I know you guys have done a variety of different parent presentations. The one I love the best is Grounded for Life. I think that is such a great title. And you guys have been doing that for years. And so what is your secret sauce to that as far as reaching parents? Like, what do you guys do?
If I had it, we wouldn't need to raise funds.
Yes.
Right.
This is true. This is
I
true.
will tell you this, and as I was listening to this, I had this conversation again last night. Angie sent me to a networking with schools, and we were talking about mentoring and different things and some of the challenges. There's only been one avenue that I've seen work really well, and that was, there's one school, it's a private school downtown, and they actually scholarship kids, and they require their parents to get community service hours. And one of the ways they get community service hours, they have to go to a Zoom, and they have 4 sessions, and we're one of them. And it's the most, so they have to go. So I was talking to some of the school officials last night, how can we incentivize getting parents to do training? So one of the things that Jason, and maybe we can talk offline, Jonathan too, as well, and Angie and I, we've kind of baffled this around, is we got to find where they're meeting and go to them. They're not going to come to us. Last year, we tried to do 16 parent programs for the public school. We got a school board member to get involved. The principals got involved in it. And I think 20 people out of 16 schools showed up. And so we then even offered it through Zoom. And I had a few more show up. So we had some. So I think we've got to get creative with that. I think, you know, here again, maybe we kind of do a brainstorming of getting some leaders together, whether churches, you know, they offer something where parents are coming to. But I think for them to come to us, I have not been successful in that. And if I did, I'd be traveling all over the country doing it every weekend. But I think we've got to learn how to figure out a way to get to the parents. Because I don't know that the parent, until they, you know, when they need us because something happened, you know, my child did this, then they call us wanting help. So I'm not sure that we've figured it out. So if anybody has, I want to learn. But I think we've got to make sure that that's something that becomes a priority. Just like when we started with the schools, we didn't know how to get in the schools and do the topics, and we did. I think we're at that same pivotal challenge.
Yes. Yep. We got to crack the code for sure. I mean, we do have opportunities here and there, but not like I would.
It's hard.
Like, yeah. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I will say that, Jason, we did have one church at one point that brought us in to do like a weekend retreat with their congregation.
Nice.
And I took the students and Bill did the parents at the same time. That was beneficial
Mhm.
because you had both of them there at the same time, and it was in partnership with one of our supporting churches. So that's a way, offering them both at the same time
Mhm.
is a good idea. And
That's
I've
good.
seen success with that. But again, it's all about relationships and partnerships and getting church people or church staff on board,
Mhm.
and that they're all promoting it, and that it requires a lot of work. But starting with our supporting churches for our nonprofits, I think are a great way to go.
Yeah. Yes. That's good. Yeah. I was just thinking, I'm sorry, I just random thought, but like, do you remember it was several years ago now, we did the Don't Hate the Weight rally,
Yes.
and we did the rally for the students, which went really well. And then you guys did the parent breakout.
Mhm.
And I thought at the time that was good. I don't know if we could pull that off again, but man, during that time, that was phenomenal. That was
Yeah.
fun. Yeah.
So you mentioned churches, right? So this is like an easy segue into the Real Summit.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Real Summit. Why the Real Summit? Like why the event putting together? When is it? Who is it for? And what's the purpose?
Well,
Yes.
when we went to a conference, Pam Stencil, we've known her for a while.
She's
I ran
awesome.
into her at one of her vending booths and we got to talking, and she said, let's get together and talk. And as we were talking, I went to her, I said, hey, I got this crazy idea. Let's put a summit together. And she go, okay. And then Angie got involved, and then we started doing it. And so they came in and we started dreaming about it. The idea is pretty simple. It's to educate pregnancy centers, churches, and the youth leaders, whether they are full-time, part-time volunteers. You know, a lot of times we go out and we go to big conferences, but people just can't do that. You know, I know Jason, you know, we live here in Tampa, so it's beautiful in January, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, for us to take 20 leaders or even 5 leaders or 2 leaders to a conference, it's really expensive.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to raise funds, you're trying to do those things, sometimes the leaders can't do that. But if we can create that. And so, you know, it's a brand new concept with Pam doing it, real essential. She's using her leverage, the speakers that work with her coming in and doing some hot topics, talking about the family, talking about the values that we need to get back to. We're going to do some breakout sessions. I know Angie and I are doing one on just fundraising because, you know, it's hard. Sometimes we feel like professional fundraisers. So it's an opportunity for us to get together and network. Our local church, our home church, is actually hosting it. They have a great facility, so it was able to do that. So the goal is to really get as many of those volunteers and workers to come, whether they're paid or not, and educate. And so Pam's put a team together, and it's a pretty big team of coming in and doing that. I know, Jason, you're going to be speaking as well. You and Angie will be doing that. So it's really to encourage, to motivate, but also to empower. And so when they go back, they don't feel like they're alone. I know when Angie and I first started doing this, you know, you kind of feel alone. And then we met Jason, then we met some others. And so that's really what we need. Because, you know, Jason, you may be doing something we're not doing, and we may be doing something you're not doing. And if we can join together, and Jonathan, if you can give insight on what you're doing, then that's the synergy. And so I think, you know, it's not just to sit and listen to a speaker, but it's to come away going, wow, I can really take that and put that back into my program or my ministry.
Yeah, that's good. So yeah, the Real Sum is coming up. So the information is January 29th and 30th. Can you give us a time, location, where to register?
Yes. The time first of all, it's going to be at Fellowship Baptist Church in Thenona, Sassa. And there is hotel information on our website for those who might be coming out of town. The event you can find all of the information that you might need to know about the whole summit itself is at Real Summit.
Okay.
The times are on Thursday on January the 9th is from 11 to 8 p.m. And the reason why it's going till 8 p.m. is because we are going to be providing dinner that evening. And then there is going to be an improv night. We have some people that are partnering with us, and they'll actually do a comedy type improv event for after dinner. And so that will go till 8. And then Friday, we're going to come back and the doors will open at 8:30. And the event will end at 4. So hopefully before, it might be a little scary with the traffic at 4 p.m. in Tampa Bay area, but
yes,
it'll be a good time. So again, that website is realsummit.net for any more information.
And people can, if they can't come for the whole conference, just let us know. But they also, if they just have people that want to come to the dinner and the comedy show, we have some separate ways for them to do that just as well, just to have that fellowship and entertainment time on the 20th.
Yeah, and the cost for that outside of the conference is $25. If they are conference attendees, then that is included in their fee that they paid when they registered.
Yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be
Me too.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Jonathan, you have anything else?
No, I'm excited. I know I saw Scott Phelps is one of the speakers.
Mhm, yeah.
He's
Yes.
a presenter. We could
Pam,
talk offline. I have a connection with Scott Phelps from up on. I served on staff at a church in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
So from the same area. But yeah, no, we're looking forward to it. Jason has spoken very highly about it. He's looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember meeting with Pam last year and just seeing the need for more churches to get behind what we're doing, not just in the pregnancy care centers, even with just the work in youth development. And you never know. And then we can serve as a resource to youth pastors. If a church doesn't, one of the things when I meet with pastors, I tell them, if your church doesn't have a youth pastor, and you do have a youth group, I'm not saying we can be the youth group, but I'm saying we can come in. We have about 12 to 20 different presentations that we can do and offer free of charge to the students there. And then we can do the digital safety, social media safety for the parents.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Again, it's just a lot of reminding them of what we do. Pastors are busy.
Mm-hmm.
But just constantly trying to raise awareness and see what happens.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
Man, I met Pam Stenzel, or I didn't meet her actually. I saw her speak at Acquire the Fire back in 2001. It was called Stand Up Florida. Ron Luce.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow.
At the fairgrounds, right?
Yeah, I think so. Or
we were there.
So 2001, and they had this showcase of speakers, and she was one of them. And I don't even remember who the other speakers were, but I remember her. She blew me out of the water. It was awesome. It was just so phenomenal. Fast forward and that was my young adult years. It's just fast forward to be her friend, to meet her and to have this connection with her, just to be at the summit. It's just so awesome.
Now you're going to be on a conference speaking with her. How's about that?
Well, I mean, maybe not a part of the fire scale, but yeah, man, it's gonna be awesome. So.
Yeah.
But
we're looking forward to it.
I know it's gonna be fun. Please come to our summit. Sign up.
Yes.
It's gonna be you're not gonna want to miss it.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Well, right.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up. So, guys, this is Baffled, the podcast meant to help you understand your misunderstood teen. Where can we find more about Impact? Because as our podcast continues to grow and we service Tampa Bay's big. We got West Tampa Bay and Pinellas County. You guys are more on the east side of the bay, Brandon, Valrico, Riverview. Yeah, where can they find more about Impact?
They can certainly visit our website at whatisimpact.com. And all of that information is listed there. Of course, they can always contact me too at Kagey at whatisimpact.com. I'll be glad to, answer any questions that they may have, but we would love for them to visit our website. Yep. And follow us on social media too.
Facebook, Instagram.
Yes.
All right.